Fantastic, man. We got some videos, some hype videos to get us started. This is I should have that every day before I start work. I think maybe we'll implement that. My name's William Sims. I want to welcome everybody here to this chat with Toby Culshaw, our newest member of the Lightcast family. And so welcome on behalf of Lightcast. We appreciate you taking a little time out of your day to hopefully find something that's a little bit educational, maybe get a nugget or two that you can take back and practice in your everyday work environment. But Toby, excited to have you here.
Excited to be here. Honestly, that intro, I think that's the most professional I've ever looked. So I'm very excited by this already.
Yeah, same. As this might be my only podcast I ever host, I'm excited that was the intro. So we'll see how this goes. We'll try to stay on track. And speaking of on track, the agenda that we have today and over the next hour, just kind of give you all an outline of what's going to happen. We're going to have this conversation with Toby Culshaw, right? He's our newest member of the Lightcast family. Excited for him to be here. Going to talk about the move and transition that he's been able to make recently, the future of talent intelligence and people analytics as he sees it from his lens and his point of view. Talk about some projects and programs that he's been a part of and things that he's going to be a part of moving forward here at Lightcast. And then it's going to be a little bit of an Ask Me Anything. So we're going to have questions that we want to encourage and get from everybody that's a part of this podcast or webinar that we're hosting today. There's a Q&A section that should be available to you. And so if you have questions that you want answered later on in this discussion, I would encourage you to use that section, specifically in the Q&A side, to pop those questions in there. We'll make sure we get to as many of those as we possibly can. So excited to get this thing launched and get started. I think to get started, Toby, we're going to have a poll question, I believe, and I think it's kind of lay some groundwork around resources. You know, I was at PSYOP. Hang on, let me rephrase that. I did not get invited to PSYOP. I got invited to a happy hour before PSYOP. They include me in the happy hour section, which is fine. And so talk to a lot of the folks there about resource allocation. What are you hearing about the resource side of things with some of your colleagues?
Yeah, I think it's tough, is the honest answer. Nice mug. I think it's really tough. I think a lot of people, for probably about the last 18 months now, have really been feeling the squeeze, where we've had an increased volatility of the market, and teams have been squeezed, you know, particularly on pure talent intelligence side of things. The teams were often based within talent acquisition. Talent acquisition got a kick in, let's be honest, in the last 2 years. The amount of recruiting went down, so they were asked to cut down their teams. So we saw a lot of pure TI teams getting squeezed, and it just meant they didn't have as much resource. But the demand for their work increased exponentially because of the volatility of the market. So yeah, I think it's been a fairly consistent piece for, I'd say, at least the last 18 months, where people haven't really felt they've been resourced up for what's coming ahead of them, particularly with the volatility of the demand. You know, the amount of work we get asked to do beyond TA and beyond that delivery piece, it's complex and it's a huge amount of work. And I don't think many teams have been resourced up enough to really be able to do what they want to be able to do and what they need to be able to do.
No, I don't disagree with that. And we're hearing that narrative pretty often. And so just by way of introduction and even talking about like Lightcast itself, you saw some of the promo videos if you were on early, but Lightcast as an organization, like we focus on providing clean labor market data globally to educational facilities, public facilities, private institutions across the globe. And so we try to make sure that we can provide that solid and strong information and data to help make decisions for organizations in every sector of business. My name is William Sims. I'm going to help host today. So my role at Lightcast is I run the professional services organization. Previously, my background is in talent acquisition. I tripped and fell into HR, as many of us do in that space. But I was a headhunter for years, ran talent acquisition, and then sold software to the largest organizations in the world to help them try to figure out these talent strategies, talent management strategies. Excited for the last 18 months to be a part of the Lightcast organization, one that I've used as a consumer and as a customer, one that I sold as a sales rep many years ago, and now be able to run this professional services team, which I think is really exciting. And Toby, I know you might not need an introduction, but I'd like for you to just share with some people that aren't familiar with your background and experience, why we're having this chat today and what you've been able to do, what you're going to do moving forward.
Yeah. So come from not a dissimilar path, if I'm going to be honest, in some ways. So I come from search and sourcing and exec research, etc. For about 20 years, I was been around that sort of space, and more I was focusing on the research and the data and the intel side of things, and through sourcing and running teams and wanting to make more placements. Honestly, I started getting into the how do we use sourcing intelligence, as I frame it nowadays, to influence the decision making so that we can make more placements. And that led me down this road of talent intelligence, where I got a taste for impacting things earlier and earlier in a decision cycle so that we can make our lives easier. Honestly, once I started getting that bug of let's just make our lives easier, frankly, I couldn't really stop it. So I was at Royal Philips, a big Dutch tech company most people would know from the health tech or the TVs, etc. And there, I ran talent intelligence there for them globally for 5 years or so. Started out just myself, ended up with a team of 25 consultants doing everything from M&A to strategy to business transformation. And then I joined Amazon 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago technically, to take over and lead one of their talent intelligence teams. So my team was covering business area called Stores, which was a huge organization. As you can imagine with Amazon, everything's huge there, the numbers were big. We had a fantastic team. We started in talent acquisition, bounced into talent management and broader HR, back into talent acquisition more recently. Once again, built the team out, and we were doing some amazing work there. And then more recently, decided to join Lightcast and continue the fun here.
Fantastic. And we're glad you did. Like I told you before, we're excited that you're here. This was one of my first hires, actually, since I've been here the last 18 months, knock on wood. Don't want to be hiring a lot of people. We've got a great team in place right now, but to have you kind of be one of those first people that we've been able to bring in to this professional services organization a long time, we couldn't be more excited and thrilled that you're a part of us and a part of the vision that we have moving forward. Do we have the poll? Do we have any answers from the poll? Let's see. Significantly quite there. Is that it? Not quite. Unknown demand. That unknown demand part. I think I talked to some of the economists on our team, Toby. They say, "What do you think about the economy?" Uncertainty is not the word that they like to use, and so unknown demand, I think, ties into that. And not quite. Nobody feels like they're sufficiently resourced. I think that's pretty fair. Pretty fair right now. What do you
It's also terrifying, though. No, the fact that 0% of our attendees feel like they're sufficiently resourced, that's terrifying.
It is terrifying. I think the questions that I heard at that happy hour were not small questions either. I mean, like and not only is it not small questions and kind of ad hoc demands that are being requested of folks in this talent intelligence, people analytics, workforce planning space, the questions are being asked from the executive suite more so than ever before around big, broad initiatives that need kind of some immediate response. And providing that type of context and data sets needed to make these big, bold, brash decisions, or at least understand that risk analysis of what's out there, to me was a little bit alarming, quite honestly, in that space. And then to see a poll like that where people don't feel like they've got the resources, I think we've got some work to do in that space. What are you hearing from the conversations that you're having on a consistent basis around the types of questions that they're getting asked right now?
Yeah, I think the big piece, obviously, at the moment in the US is the focus on, and I know we're going to talk about it later, on the tariffs and the potential impacts of that. I think the broad themes haven't changed beyond that, in that thematically, location's been huge for 2-3 years plus. Previously, it was location around what do we do with the remote, but it's still tied to location. We're now location agnostic. And then it was obviously a lot of firms going back to return to office and return to hub. So suddenly it became, okay, well, now what's the location feasibility for that? Or where do we put this? With the cost focus for the last 18 months, 2 years, it was, where do we go for low cost centres? And then if everyone's going to the low cost centres, what's the feasibility of those low cost centres now that it's driving attrition, et cetera, et cetera. So I think location is still a huge part of most talent intelligence questions. I think tied to that, obviously, skills based hiring, skills based organizations, absolutely massive at the moment. So you're seeing that come through more and more, and looking at the overlap between the skills based dot 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 and then the TI question they ask. So whether it's the location piece and then the relevant skills, whether it's the competitor intelligence and then the relevant skills. So you're seeing much more of the kind of overlapping Venn diagram piece coming through. But I think honestly that there's just an increased pressure on the immediacy. You know, firms aren't really looking as far into the 2, 3, 5 year piece. It's bringing it closer and saying, what are the burning platforms? What's that really tight operational intelligence that's going to get us through the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? So I'm seeing that timeline change with that pressure as well.
Is there the speed to respond back to leadership for, I do still think a lot of this, as strategic as organizations want to be, this is the question of the moment quite often, from the feedback that I'm receiving. The speed and immediacy of trying to get that information circulated, at least directionally accurate, right, for organizations. You've been a practitioner. How do you cope with like the speed and accuracy conundrum of trying to get as much information as you can quickly, or trying to make sure it's as accurate as you possibly can, knowing that it's hard to do both of those at the same time?
Yeah, it is hard. I think there's probably two elements. I think there's the being clear on what you can be directional versus what you need accurate. That's really, really hard. So if you need absolute bang on accuracy, fine, but you're going to have fewer parameters or you're going to need a longer time frame. If directional is enough, then run with that. I think equally it's that resource management and prioritization piece, and also, frankly, what I think companies with a professional services arm like we've got are going to be key, because leaning on extra resources where you need it, or with this prioritization internally if you don't, that's going to be really key. So be comfortable dropping the ball on stuff internally. Be comfortable if you've got a shift in priorities, saying to your leaders, we're not resourced up for all of this. Where is your priority? What can we let go of? But I think that's where, when I look to the future, it's having tie-ins with organizations like us, where you can go, I'm not resourced up for this at the moment. I've got a list of 10 priorities. I can't drop the ball on any of these. How can you guys help me? And I think that rapid turnaround, rapid deployment is really needed for that. That flexibility of resource is really, really hot.
Yeah, no, I think it's hard. I think organizations' expectations, well, just do more with less, jump higher, run faster. It's like, no, we have to stop and think of which one of these priorities do you want me to remove from my plate to add this one to it. And it's hard to have that conversation. If you're not comfortable in your role and your job and your communication back, it's hard to have that conversation candidly with leaders within an organization. And so, but I think it's so critically important to be honest and upfront about that discussion as early as you possibly can. When we think about this move, Toby, I think you probably got a couple question marks around like, where are you going? What are you doing? Like, you're leaving where to go where in this space? When you think about making this transition and this move, can you talk a little bit about the factors that you were considering? I know you feel like you did a lot of really great work at Amazon, and I think the proof's in the pudding that you absolutely did. But thinking about this next part of your career and this journey, can you walk us through the kind of the thought process, your mindset, and what's exciting to go from that type of brand size and scope coming over to Lightcast in our organization?
Yeah, for sure. So I think if I do it in reverse order, so the size of organization piece, I remember having a conversation through the interview process, and I was like, I am nervous of going from such a big organization to a smaller company. And somebody said, we're not a small company. It's like, well, yeah, but it's comparative, isn't it? We're 1.7 million, so comparatively it is. Um, but for me, there's a real excitement around that, where we're big enough that we've got proper infrastructure, systems, processes, tools, people, structure, yada yada yada. But it's a small enough where you can make proper change. You can really impact things across organizations. So that's really exciting for me. I think some of uh, the cultural pieces are very similar, which in a good way. So one of the things I loved about Amazon was the decentralized decision making, the empowerment, the ability to innovate. And I've come here, and that's really similar. We are very decentralized decision making. You're empowered just to try stuff, run with stuff, test stuff, which for me is fantastic, because I like just going out there and just being able to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Sorry about that in advance. But that's really exciting for me. I think the broader piece, though, around why did I come here, comes to two things. One is, when I started on the talent intelligence journey at Philips, I obviously formed the Talent Intelligence Collective, and I wanted to understand how other companies were working. What's the benchmark? I'd seen what we did with sourcing when we brought sourcing in house like 15 years earlier. And honestly, I think we broke it. Sourcing started off as low volume, high value, high touch. And by the end of it, it was around a volume source of hire. And I saw this thing in TI, and I was like, this could be genuinely amazing. I don't want us to mess this up again. So I started the Talent Intel Collective to build a bit of community around that. And that's going great. And we obviously ran that when we started at Philips and carried on going through the Amazon period. But when I was kind of sitting at Amazon, thinking of my next step and next play, I really wanted to be able to use the next play to leverage the voice and impact the industry more. I could only do so much from within companies. And I wanted to go to, so hence the move to the vendor side, to be able to influence things at scale more. And honestly, I wanted to go to a vendor where I looked at it and thought, I've been a customer for 4 years. Who do I trust when I go to? And Lightcast was the obvious choice. So for me, coming across, working on the professional services side, where I look at it and, like we mentioned earlier, resource constraints have been something I've been fighting against for the last 10 years of my career. So being able to work somewhere where we can help people when they do have resource constraints, where we can look at these problems, it's fantastic. And genuinely being in a company where I'm business side, and the entire company is focused around the thing that I'm passionate about. The entire company, everything we do, all our products, all our services, all our business lines, everything is focused on, whether it's labor market intelligence or econ staff or TI, it's all stuff that I love. So for me, genuinely, it doesn't feel like work, which is very weird. I probably shouldn't say that to my boss, but it feels like I'm a kid that loves sweets, and I've gone into a sweet factory. It's like I just get to play and see all this stuff. So yeah, for me, it's hugely exciting to be able to see the potential.
Well, look, I would echo a lot of that, and I'm glad, as I mentioned earlier, I'm glad you're here. The excitement for me, and that I think we kind of exude this within our organization really well. I think who we are culturally is, if you've met anybody that works at Lightcast, hopefully you feel this excitement about who we are and what we believe in. And we believe firmly in providing the best and most accurate information back to our customers on a continual basis. That's it, right? I mean, and we think the information should impact the decisions you make that are impactful to the biggest expense within your business, which is your people. And so that is the type of role that I think we can play a role in. And what I think we're seeing now is that business imperatives are being hindered because of the shifts in the labor market, because of the uncertainty that's out there overall, because of these changes with work from home and even immigration strategies, et cetera, that are happening. Having that sort of solid resource and foundation of a partner that can give that information back, we're just trying to provide added value to those organizations on a consistent basis. That's our true North Star, right? That we see and feel all the time. Hopefully you felt that coming on board, not just as a customer, but now seeing the inside the walls, that is actually a very true statement.
100%, 100%. And no, coming from where I came from, we obviously were hot on the leadership principles in my previous organization. And when I came in and I saw the principles we like to run by, um, I loved it, because it really did set the tone and the ethos of the organization. And one of them in particular is going beyond for the customer and delighting the customer. And for me, that's huge. Like there's just so much potential to impact at scale and to go further and beyond. And customers, quite a lot often we don't know the question we're asking. We know our problem statement,
Right.
and we can go and say like, "This is what my problem is, and this is what I need to fix it." But being able to go that extra mile and saying, "Well, actually, look, we've been in this situation literally 1,000 times before. We've done more research than probably anyone else in the world." Like, you might think you need A, B, and C, but you probably also need X, Y, and Z as well. Like that I think is really powerful. Being able to do truly consultative advisory within that is really, really powerful. So yeah, for me, it's hugely exciting.
I'm going to pretend I know what X, Y, and Z means, since that's not a term. Z is not a term that I've familiar. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, the the reach and impact for your role here at Lightcast, when you think about what's possible, what gets you excited to wake up in the morning and kind of tackle the challenges that we see with our customers on a regular basis?
Honestly, it's pretty wild. I actually this morning, and this is going way too personal, so apologies to everyone on the call, but my youngest kid came in because he was having a nightmare, and we were talking about our dreams, and genuinely, he was saying about his bad dream he just had. And I went, I just had an amazing dream. I was dreaming about work, and he was like, "Why are you dreaming about work?" And my youngest is 6 years old. It was the weirdest thing. But I genuinely, I'm so excited about the opportunities because I look across what we've been doing. We've done some amazing work, and I've been going through kind of the history of some of the work the team's been doing. Um, the amount of amazing stuff we've done, and a huge chunk of it's been in education and government historically, and we haven't really hit enterprise in the same way. Um, but the work and the standard of the work and the quality and the level of like the quality control and the detail is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I look at it and think, if we can gear that up and put a rocket under that for all of enterprise, and particularly when you think the vast majority of rest of world we haven't really expanded and gone aggressively into yet, that's really exciting. And I mean that half from a growth for Lightcast, etc., which is awesome, but maybe 25% that 75% honestly is the amount of people I talk to that need help with this stuff. And if you ever put a talent intelligence job out there, particularly if you're fixed on location, which a lot of them are at the moment, it's really hard to hire people because there's so little of this capability out there. So for me, the ability to scale this and to be able to go to companies and say, we can help with this, we can help with this problem you're facing, we can help with these issues you're looking at in the future, both in the project short term one-off piece, but also programmatically, and say, all right, you're going to need this recurrently. You're always going to face these issues. These aren't going to go away. That for me is really exciting, where we can genuinely set the standard of this is what good TI looks like across the world, which is sounds a bit arrogant to say, but I genuinely think we can set the standard for industry.
Well, and I also think, Toby, to personalize it to the people you're talking with. I mean, I think that's the beauty of the scale of where we've been as an organization, and the perspective that we bring to the table is that 80% of it might be these best practices that we're seeing across the board, but that 20% that's nuanced and unique to your specific business, that's where that little secret sauce comes in, and that collaborative effort with our team and our economists and data scientists and labor market and intelligence folks that study this stuff all day, from skills professionals to TI professionals, to say like, all right, let's get into the minutia of how it is impactful to your business. It's not just throwing it into an AI bot. It's real people solving real problems using work that they've done extensively over years and years and years to come in and help build a customized solution for your business.
Absolutely. The old saying, devil is in the detail. It's so true. And I could see in the questions, Malik is on the chat. Malik will testify. Like when I talk to my team about projects and data accuracy and quality control, etc., I describe it as a tapestry. And the problem is, tapestries are amazing, wonderfully beautiful things. But if you're a customer and you see one thread, and that one thread is sticking out, and you start pulling at that one thread, it doesn't matter if the rest of the project or deliverable is absolutely on point. You start pulling at that, everything falls apart. And I think that's where that devil in the detail comes from. Like if you're just delivering things at the 80%, and it's the directional, but it's not really bang on. It's not really customized to what you actually your customer and the client needs. They start picking at that. They start picking at that one little data point, and they start digging in there. And before you know it, even if the rest of it's absolutely on point and true, the trust is gone, and that trust is really, really, really hard to rebuild. So yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because I think it can't be understated how important having people you can trust to deliver this stuff. It really is.
Even a sounding board. I know the conversation you and I have often is really about some of the work that we do is to validate decisions that are already being made, and some of it is to calibrate it, right? Make sure it's on the right track and trajectory. And so like that is that third party expert come in and say, yes, this is the decisions we're making, and this is the right decisions based off of these data points. Or, hey, your North Star is right, but you're just a few degrees off course. And that few degrees over a period of time is going to be not where you want it to be.
Yep.
That's where I think organizations are trying to leverage at least our professional services team, our APIs, our software to make those decisions and help justify what their gut is typically telling them, their internal data is telling them, and say, all right, is that external data going to have an impact that we're not seeing currently in that marketplace? Fantastic.
100%.
So we threw you into the immediacy of our needs within the business pretty quickly. I know you were able to travel down to London with our friend Allison and our good friends at the Skill Collective. Can you talk about just how you've been able to just jump right in with both feet and start that discussion, and even a little bit of that dinner, if you can give us some insight?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we had a one-to-one last week, and you said, how's the first week been? And because at that point I'd been a week in, and I said, it feels like I've been here for a week and also 10 years, because it's been a whirlwind of the first couple of weeks, in a very good way. The dinner was great. It was a really small dinner of people that deeply wanted to talk about, skills-based hiring, skills-based organizations, the challenges around that. How do you stand up this skills-based ... How do you get the data right? How do you get it aligned? How do you get your external talking to your internal? Because it's really hard stuff. All of that stuff's really hard, and that's one of the reasons I think Lightcast is positioned well. Is once you get that kind of framework in place and the taxonomies aligned, you can kind of know that you're at least majority talking apples to apples, pairs to pairs. Because it's really hard. If not, it's really hard to know if I'm talking about customer service internally, is that what I mean externally? And actually, a previous organization, we had customer service as a job title. All these searches, we should have found thousands of candidates. Customer service to us ended up to be first line MRI engineering support. We called it customer service because we were selling MRI machines. But when you were doing the labor market data for it and you were using customer service, it was completely misaligned. So I think the dinner was great. The amount of people that are genuinely looking at this stuff very seriously was enthusing. It really was. Like the amount of people were going, do you know what? Whether they think it's the skills bit, whether they think that it's the total solution, whether they think they need to bring in different taxonomies around like activity levels or how the roles are designed, whatever it may be, the fact that people are caring about this stuff and organizations are investing in this stuff, for me, that was the really exciting bit. Was actually organizations are investing. It's a tough economy. It's a tough market for people, but they're seeing the value in aligning this stuff, because suddenly you can have your talent acquisition talking to your talent management and the internal talent marketplace and your compensation function, etc. They're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet. So I think it was a great dinner, really good. I'm a big fan of those kind of small, tight groups where you can have very intimate conversations. There was an awesome panel. They were all brilliant as well. Shouldn't not mention them. The panel was great as well. So it was a great conversation. But it was nice to do it in a tight, informal manner, to be honest.
Good. That skills discussion, we talk to our customers and try to remind them that skills is not a project, it's a program. It's like saying you're done with talent management. It's never, you're done with recruiting. You're done with talent acquisition. This is things that are ongoing within your business. These are living, breathing, programmatic changes that we're making, and things that you've done historically, but now it's tied to a lot of the software and the technology and these other areas that can get a little bit deeper and add these layers of complexity and ideally simplify it, quite frankly, after that complexity, to roll those out from the pre-sales process to the upskilling process and see where your organization is. We're excited to help many groups in that journey, in the process. When I talked to you and I talked to our good friend Cole, who started with us, and we talk about this dynamic between the people analytics side, talent intelligence side of the house, and in that space. For a guy from South Louisiana like me, right? Like, I'm from the swamps down here. Can you kind of define those two terms for me? Like, how do you define people analytics, talent intelligence? What does it mean to you? When you talk about that space, how do you define it?
Yeah, I think it's messy is the short answer. And I've had debates with Cole and I've had very friendly conversations. I've had debates with like Rich Rosenow and Matt about this, and we joke about it because he thinks TI is a subset of PA. I argue PA is a subset of TI. The reality is we're all Venn diagrams. We're all talking about kind of similar stuff, just overlapping. For me, people analytics is predominantly an internally focused function that's been historically HR reporting, and now it's broadening out. But it's traditionally an internally focused piece where you're looking at internal data sets that are somewhat structured, usually something within your control. And then you might bring in some external data to help validate and give context. Talent intelligence is the complete opposite. It's primarily an externally based piece of data, whether that's about jobs or skills or competitors and markets, locations. It's all around that talent ecosystem, but it's predominantly externally based. And then you're bringing that data into your organization to say, how does this work? How does this affect our decisions? And then you might use the internal data for context within that. It gets messy fast, though, is the honest answer. So whether you're in people analytics, talent intelligence, strategic workforce planning, talent acquisition analytics, recruitment marketing analytics, you can kind of vary and flow between, because none of us are resourced up effectively. All of us are kind of trying to sort of scramble and trying to find the future. Honestly, I think eventually we'll all merge into one workforce intelligence organization. But at the moment, it's that phase of, how do we play nicely together? How do we kind of do those handoffs and handshakes to each other? Where is it a capability versus a function? So you're seeing more and more talent intelligence, for example, as the functions got hit, as I mentioned earlier, over the last 18 months, because majority sat within TA, that capability was still needed. The demand was still needed. So what you're seeing is the TI capability often being hired into SWP roles or people analytics roles. So that capability is still there. So we're seeing them rebuild in different shapes and different ways and different flavors. But broadly speaking, for me, TI is using external labor market data about whatever you determine in the labor market to affect internal decision making.
When we talk about near future, and I think many organizations are like, that could be daily or weekly at this stage with the pace of changes that are happening in external factors that many people don't have a lot of control over. In talent intelligence, how can peers play a key role in helping drive that strategic initiative, or understand what do they need to be aware of for these near future kind of future state challenges that they may be facing?
Yeah, I think it's two things. One is being very proactive, both internal and external. So being proactive external, as in understanding the external context. Be hot on. I am obviously biased, so being hot on talent intelligence, looking externally, seeing what's going on in the market, getting the data you need. If you don't have the data, partner with whoever you need to partner with to get the data. The good thing is there's a whole lot of data out there in this world. So you generally, most things you're after, you're going to be able to find a data source for it somewhere. So be proactive externally. I'd say that internally, though, you've got to be equally proactive to understand the internal context. There's a lot of stuff at the moment that I think people are very noisy, but it doesn't mean that's the important work. So understanding what are the key drivers, what's noise versus a real key decision maker, pardon me, and really targeting down with leadership around what do they really need? What's really important? Where are they really trying to get to? Because the world is so volatile, you're going to get a lot of leaders that are asking for these quick, nice to haves, and it's not really important stuff in the scheme of things, but it's that context. So getting on the front foot and saying, well, actually, so tariffs at the moment. If you don't do anything about the tariffs and what this could mean to your footprint, what this could mean to your workforce, what this could mean to your talent supply, if you don't do anything about that now and you're not proactive on the front foot of doing that research, you're going to get that question hit you in a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. Well, it's going to come down that road at some point if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, the conversations will be happening behind closed doors and you won't even be mentioned. And so they won't even know you exist as a capability. So be proactive and think about this research and get ahead of it so that you're looking around a corner for your leadership team.
No, and I think we had a poll question that we wanted to share with the folks that are listening to us around this specific space about the uncertainty that's in the market. When you hear about that uncertainty and think about the internal needs and the external needs, how do you help leadership prioritize? Like what's important? What is a wild goose chase? What is, hey, that's not going to be a thing 48 hours from now? Like, how do you make sure that you can have that voice at the table, that credible kind of conversation with your peer groups or executive team or boss, et cetera, to make sure that you're spending your time, and the time piece is limited, resources are constrained. Like that's really the value, the thing that I'm hearing over and over and over again. But I also believe that there is this wave, this tsunami of questions that are just coming from different places all the time, whether it's a labor shortage or a risk piece or a tariff over here, immigration challenge. I need to move a plant from one location to another location, maybe quickly. How do you help an organization prioritize what's important?
Yeah, I think it's one of the joys and the pains of talent intelligence is it's so broad because you can get into a minutiae and you can equally see that between teams. You can have two TI people, two TI teams on the face of it doing the same work. When you dig into it, entirely different work. One could be heavy into competitive intelligence, one could be heavy into location strategy, completely different. But I think that the key for me is tie in with the leadership and really understand what's their strategic business drivers. What are they trying to deliver in the short, medium, long term? And try and prioritize your work aligning to that. I think the other piece is understanding philosophically what your company is. Some companies will look to the future and say, these are all the risks we can see. We want to de-risk them. So we want to become an organization that is proactive at de-risking. Other organizations will go, we don't really care about the risks that are rolling down the road because they're not realized. We're going to wait until those risks are actual issues and they will brute force a solve to those issues. So understanding kind of philosophically what your company is going to be will be absolutely vital, because if you're looking ahead and going, we can de-risk these 100 things and I'm going to need all these resources to de-risk all of these 100 things and etc., that's not going to land with your leadership team if your leadership team don't care about de-risking the future, if they care about solving the brute force in the near term. So understanding which philosophical organization you are will really help with the resourcing and really help with that prioritization, because the reality is no matter what those risks are down the road, if your organization doesn't look at risks in that way, it waits there's an issue, you're going to be better off to saying, okay, what are the short to medium term issues we're facing, and how do we brute force that, and then how do we build a TI muscle that can react really effectively and really rapidly in an operational near term, rather than building out a whole suite of products that are kind of really future focused that are not going to get used because they might be great, but if no one's looking to that 5-year horizon, it's going to go nowhere.
Yeah, no, I think it's the nature of the beast that we're in, the immediacy of solving problems versus trying to maintain that long-term vision. It is tough to balance anywhere, right? For any part of life, not just professionally, personally too. It's always critically important. JP, we have the poll results? Can we share those? Do we have them? If we do, we can do that. And in the meantime, volatility, yeah, we're looking to try to figure out, it's kind of what we anticipated. So that's really good. We think we're going to try to provide some content and context around what we're seeing in that specific space pretty soon. So be prepared for that. The other piece I'd like to kind of share in the chat, and I'll ask my partner JP to help do this, is really that we talked about that risk piece, Toby, and we just launched a workforce risk assessment that I think is really exciting for people to understand where that kind of longer term risk might impact organizations. Shift gears a little bit. I'm selfish. We got a professional services group you're a part of now. Super excited about it. Can you talk specifically maybe about like a project you've done historically, or even some of the things that you are excited about seeing in a few short weeks that you think you'll be able to impact here at Lightcast, or use previous experience to say like, hey, I saw this previously. I think we can make some stuff happen here.
Yeah, for sure. And audience, feel free to chuck things in the chat as well. If you're seeing topics I'm not picking up on that you think will be interesting, or if I'm saying stuff you go, yeah, I'd love someone to build that out. So for me personally, when I've had the last 10 years or so of teams, there's been a number of kind of products internally we wanted to build out that have just been very hard because we didn't necessarily have the technical capabilities or the capacity to build them. So when I think about effective battle cards, and whether it's competitor battle cards, location battle cards, really hard to build that out in a sustainable way, because what you really want is a dynamic data set within that, and suddenly then you're in to a whole other world of data scraping and aggregation, etc. When I think about always on intelligence, where you're always keeping an eye on certain competitors or certain locations, and you're always having regular feed, to do that effectively, you either kind of need an API, you need a flat file, you need a Snowflake or whatever it is. You need that data set to come in and that aggregation to come in, but it's really hard. Honestly, it's really hard when you're internally and you've got that whole prioritization piece, and you're suddenly kind of dedicating resources to building that sort of stuff. That's really, really hard. I'm very excited about seeing what we can build here, particularly with our dashboard self-service side of the ProServe organization. That's really exciting to me, because I think we can suddenly build out a whole series of very scalable, very easily digestible data and analytics and insights products. I think that easily digestible is really key, particularly when you start breaking into kind of the talent acquisition space, and you're wanting to build tools that recruiters can use on a day-to-day. That's really hard when you're giving them a kind of a big, heavy PDF or a Word document or whatever it may be. Having something that's really easily digestible, they can just snap into, see what they need, get their key insights, snap back out. That's really interesting. I think there's a whole raft of bundled services that are super interesting. So when we start bringing these things together, there's something I'm thinking about. I'm normally calling it TI in a box. I don't think the name's going to be trademarkable. I don't think it's a good name. But there's I was having chats. Actually, I think I had a chat with Megan in the chat as well, about the fact that most TI functions are small. The vast majority of TI functions are sub 5 people. And as we mentioned earlier, like, resources really constrained, but that doesn't mean that the demand on them and the capacity and capability they need is any different. So I'd really like to build something out where we have this instant off the shelf. This is your TI function. It's just built as a product or a service. Mm-hmm. So you've suddenly got your battle cards, you've got your key dashboards, you've got X number of key reports a year, you've got econ that can come in and talk to your leadership team at your QBRs or whatever it may be. But it's not a heavy headcount on your cost base. And I think being internally, and one of the lessons I learned was you can have different buckets of budget, and getting headcount's really hard. Getting headcount can be really, really hard. But if I flip, say, some of my software into a services piece on a contract, I can get away with that. It's a different bucket. It's a different budget cycle. So looking at that sort of stuff and saying, well, actually, how can we use the resources more effectively, and how can we give people access to this scaled data and scaled intel as simply as possible with as few barriers to entry as possible? That's really exciting, because I think we're spending, as TI teams internally, we're spending so much time building these resources, whether it's data engineering or data cleansing or data visualization. And reality, you don't want to spend any time doing that stuff. You want to spend all your time really communicating this out to the business, communicating this out and actually socializing all this research. But we're spending so much time building, we have no time for that socialization. And I think that's one of the things I see a lot of TI teams struggling with is how do you prove the impact when you haven't really had the opportunity to socialize it properly?
I really appreciate that context, Toby, and even thinking about like TI in a box, or having this kind of off the shelf solution to help you get that directional guidance really fast. Speed is the kind of a theme that we've talked about a little bit today. The speed of change, speed of need for data, the speed of information that we have to be able to provide to our customers on a regular basis, the speed of insight. It's not just data, and that's a question we get a lot. It's like, great, you're a data company. I need answers, right? I need insight for the
100%.
data. And even teams that don't have TI or don't have workforce planning, those are the organizations that I'm also a little concerned with. Of what they're not data experts or in this information all day, but directionally they need that guidance and support. How do you provide that for organizations that aren't resourced at all in this specific
100%. That
side?
rapid turnaround, that rapid insight, that's absolutely vital. And I think it's that comes back to that directional versus accurate. And that's what Megan gave a really great presentation last year at the TI conference on direction accuracy. But I think that rapid turnaround to be able to give a very quick insight to leadership very fluidly in an agile way is going to be absolutely key.
Well, perfect. Well, I know we've got some questions in the chat. If you haven't put them in the Q&A section, I'd encourage you to do so. Toby, we're going to do some rapid fire questions. You ready? On the hot seat?
I think so.
All right, perfect. Let's see. Most organizations obsess over time to hire, time to offer, and measure that quality of hire. What are the new metrics smart recruiters should be thinking about as we move into as we're in 2025?
Oh, this is a great point, and this comes hot off the podcast with Steve Kerwin from Amazon, where we got talking about quality of hire. Quality of hire for me shouldn't be anywhere near a TA organization. So I'm going to do it in reverse order. It shouldn't be anywhere near a TA organization's metric. And I know you're a former TA leader, so you might agree or disagree on this one. But it's like judging IT procurement on how well a software engineer writes code on the computer because you happen to bring the computer into the organization. Quality of hire is just a bad metric for me. I think quality of shortlist, fine, I can get behind that. But I think the time to hire is a very valid metric with a caveat. I think what I find interesting with that is it's not so much the time to hire in of itself. It's how does that sit compared to your competitors, compared to your peers in a given market and in a given role type, in a given etc. Because that gives an interesting question of why are we longer? Why are we shorter? What is our process and how does it differ? And I think that for me, that's the interesting bit in terms of time to hire. Just simply making something faster for the sake of it, it's irrelevant unless you're in a role where it's something like sales that are bringing revenue into and revenue generating within an organization. Fine, then play with the system to make sure you're getting the right hire bit in as efficiently as possible. But I think for me, I think it would be much more interesting to start looking at the value creation within a function, the overall savings you're bringing to the bottom line, the net promoter score of your business for you as a function or as a hiring manager, whatever it may be. We need to think around value creation rather than purely cost efficiency or time efficiency. It's the time quality cost piece. I think we need to focus more on the quality, and the time and the cost will then kind of take care of themselves if you're focusing on the quality of output of TA.
Yeah, I would say even quality over time, right? I mean, because I think that is so much of that impetus is focused and should be focused on the hiring manager and their involvement in that process. And I think there's too often it's kicked back to TA, and it's like, no, you're our customer. We're serving you. Like at the end of the day, your onboarding experience, a lot of factors have to be owned by the hiring manager because we know why people leave organizations, right? They leave organizations because of their boss, and that's most of the time. And so that's a piece of that puzzle. All right, next question. Do you see a hype cycle, which I like that term just in general, decline of interest after initial excitement when stakeholders who know their own talent in certain countries doubt data credibility, then use as an excuse not to use it or to reduce spending? So using the data quality piece to kind of change their motivation or where they're spending their dollars.
Leaders will often lead in their own vested interest. So if you're, and I don't think that should affect the work we do. So I've had situations where leaders will push back projects multiple times because they wanted a certain location to come out on top, and out of the locations, it was just coming out on bottom. And after this got escalated a few times, it turned out they just turned around and went, "Look, I don't want to move my kids in school. Make this location work." And we didn't. We stuck to our guns, we didn't. I've equally had times where projects have looped back and we said, well, we've had this location that's opened. We've heard TI was involved with the location strategy. Can we dig into it? And we looked at it and we said, yeah, we made it recommendations 17 out of 20. It was absolutely not the one to go to. The business decided to go there because it was cheap. It's fallen on its face. So I think absolutely, can you see stakeholders withdrawing when the data doesn't tell them what they wanted to say, or they're doubting the data? 100%. Is it that a reason not to say what you should say and stay true to yourself? No, you should still stay true to yourself. But I think data credibility is absolutely key. I mentioned at the outset the reason I joined Lightcast was I think the data is the most credible. It's academic background. It's very structured. I think it's absolutely vital to get the credibility on the data. I think it's equally important to say to the business, this is where we're at, this is where the discrepancy might be, and this is why. So I think understanding that context is really important. But yeah, I think leaders are going to always have their own context and their own agenda.
I would also recommend like the next step of that conversation is also what's the delta difference between making that
Yeah,
decision versus the decision we're recommending. It's not just
yeah,
providing that data and saying yes or no, this is what we want. It's also saying here's what we think the financial impact could be making that decision. And I think that's where we sometimes stop a little short in our own world and say like, no, this is the next question that you should ask, the next question you should be aware of, why financially we believe it to be the right decision, whether that's time, whether that's energy, whether that's real dollars going out the door, et cetera, effort, whatever that might look like. But I do think there is kind of that next piece that has to give it some context too.
absolutely agree. And the other thing I forgot to mention was and this is harking back to Bezos, so apologies, but if the anecdotes and the data don't match, dig in to find out why. Like there may be that if that hiring manager and that senior stakeholder is looking at it going, this data doesn't feel true. Dig into it. Look into why is that? Are we using customer service to mean MRI engineering support? Do we say we hire X, but in actual fact we hire A, B, and C? Like,
Right.
don't be arrogant enough to assume that you're bang on right every single time. The reality is, you can't know everything about everything and everyone. So do some digging. If something is an outlier and it feels weird, dig into it. But 100% to your point, bring it back to the dollars, the dollar value and the ROI.
How do you see AI influencing talent intelligence? We haven't
I think
said
that's a great question.
enough on the call, by the way. We're not going to hit our quota of AI talk. So like that's part of the rationale for this question.
Tick that one off. I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to be huge with a caveat. It's going to be huge for that general directional piece. It's going to be huge for, I think, having a very easily digestible mechanism to get self-service for intelligence, etc. I think you can probably have a lot of the business as usual, nice to have requests that you get often from a recruiter needing support in a given role at a rec level. I think you can get a lot of that stuff serviced through some Gen AI capabilities. If with some caveats, you've got to have some really structured data in the background. You've got to have some really good control mechanisms on there to make sure that it's not hallucinating, it's not ghosting, it's not bringing out other stuff. So you have some really tight mechanisms in there. So I think kind of getting talent intelligence out to the broader stakeholder group that aren't TI experts, I think it'll be wonderful for. I think equally it's a huge risk and a huge danger because there are going to be a lot of people that are using AI to do talent intelligence, inverted commas. And in reality, the systems are just ghosting and it's making up data. And I think that's a huge risk. I think it's a huge risk to push it too far because suddenly your role as a trusted advisor is going to be massively eroded. So I think keeping control of the important decision-making piece and that control is going to be vital. but it's going to impact one way or the other.
Yeah, we are hearing that people still want that personal touch, almost even more so now, to say like, all right, is this validated? Have you looked at this?
Right.
Has somebody within your group who's a data scientist or economist or a talent intelligence skills professional looked at this information and data and said, yes, it has my blessing to move forward, not just coming out straight from AI directly to me. So I think you're spot on
100%.
there, where people are feeling that level of concern overall. A few people ask this question. I think it's the right question, right? Which is, you've done a lot of TI consulting work. Are you going to be doing that at Lightcast? Is there going to be some TI consulting opportunities for you while you're at Lightcast?
I'd never say never. I think it depends what people ask.
Yes. How about that? I'll say possibly, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
I like.
Yes.
For me, I think the joy of this role is I get to go out and talk to loads of customers and find out what's going on, what they're trying to build, what they want to do. I think there's an amazing capability within Lightcast already in terms of the team we've got in place in ProServe. But I love TI consultancy, and I love building out TI teams and functional teams, and I think that's absolutely needed. I think if I do my job right, we're going to have such a huge demand in ProServe. We're going to have to build out entire TI functions to try and resource that need. So yeah, hopefully I can do my job right, and we have a massive demand to build out TI consultancy.
Right. That's the goal, right? That's the expectation. Well, Toby, I know we're nearing the end here. Is there any question we should have asked you that we didn't?
Oh, that's a curveball question.
Well, that's my favorite
Um,
question of all time.
um, honestly, I think it's been a nice broad discussion. I think there's some really interesting questions coming in around the scalability. I think there's some interesting future. I think the exciting bit for me is the world is our oyster. We can build whatever we want. It's the old field of dreams. Build it and they will come. I think we've got this really interesting opportunity now to really explode across the TI market. In a really healthy way. I think the culture within Lightcast is one where it's holistic and it's a very build together, considerate organization, and I'm excited by that.
Well, good. We're excited to give you the keys to let that happen. So we'll wrap this up. I appreciate everybody joining and spending a little bit of time with us. Hopefully you got a nugget or two that you can bring back to your respective organizations. If not, let us know. We take feedback really seriously. We want to make sure we're answering questions. And if there are things you want us to talk about in future state, we're happy to do so. So Toby, once again, welcome to the Lightcast family. Welcome to the team. We're excited you're here and excited you're going to play a key role in driving what talent intelligence means to our customer base.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it. And thank you for not firing me.
Of course. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.